right now, and just work with us. I'm sure you will find yourself continually entertained and informed, as we like to keep you here on Heat 100 Radio. We say the station that keeps it 100. So what we got going on is, another episode, another installment of the SportsRap podcast, right here on Heat 100 Radio with your boy. I am flying solo today, but nonetheless, the show must go on, and I'm here. So, peep this. You know what we do. We got some news and some stuff for you. Stan, always tuning in. Thank you for your continued support, good brother. Congratulations to you as well on winning the Philly Pro-Am. I know you guys have been wishing for that and waiting for that for a minute, but congratulations to you on that. James E. Clax, thanks for tuning in as well. So listen, folks, we're going to get right down to what we do. And I got a story for you that I'm going to give to you that I just got this morning, mixed in with some of the other stuff that I'm going to talk about today. So just sit tight, buckle in. You know what we do. Los from the Jack Los Experience. What's going on, good brother? Good morning to you all. So the Suns and Coach Monty Williams have agreed on an extension. There was not a lot of details as to what was going to be going on, or what the particulars were with the detail, but there has been some talk and some things going on with Monty Williams, and he has been extended, which I think is a good thing. He is a really good coach. You see what he has done to that franchise, what he has done with that franchise, and how he has improved and made them pretty much a staple in the Western Conference as of the most recent year. So shout outs to him for that, and shout outs to him for getting that extension. The NFL is still monitoring the Alvin Kamara battery case. So if you didn't hear, I'm sure we talked about it here on the show. There's a case pending, whatever, with Alvin Kamara, assault and battery and whatnot, yada, yada, yada. We all know the story. We all know the backdrop of the story. But the NFL has now put it out that they are still monitoring that case. So apparently that just means that they are waiting to see what happens in the particular case in whatever city or particular state it is in that judiciary, to find out probably, or more than likely, what his punishment will be from the NFL. So it's a tricky thing, it's also like we saw that Calvin Ridley was suspended pretty much, I think, for the season for a $1,500 bet. There's still stuff still out. The jury's still out on a punishment for Deshaun Watson. So who knows what's going on with the NFL and what they're thinking as far as their punishments and how they're handling things right now. So, of course, as always, definitely I will keep my ear to that story. Whatever I get, definitely will relay back to you all when I get the information. The Eagles are among the teams listed in a potential Jesse Bates trade. If you don't know, you all know what the Eagles did this summer. A lot of people, national critics and local critics and fans is all in the same boat, have mentioned that the Eagles have done pretty well this year in the offseason, in the draft and in free agency. They also addressed that the Eagles filled some holes, but there were still questions with the one position in safety. Jesse Bates is a much talked about safety for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think he has requested a trade, or he's been in trade talks, and now the Eagles have surfaced as a potential trade destination for him. Number one basketball recruit Gigi Jackson has decommitted from the University of North Carolina and is now committed to South Carolina. How funny is that? You go from North Carolina to South Carolina. Pretty funny, but nonetheless, that's what he has just done. Texas rookie wide receiver John Metch III has been diagnosed with leukemia. Prayers and condolences out to him and his family. Hopefully the doctors have caught it early enough. Hopefully he can get treatment and at some point get back on the field in some type of capacity. Vince McMahon has announced his retirement from the WWE. The Nets, Seth Curry, will be touring Australia for Foot Locker. There are rumors that LeBron James has no interest in playing with Russell Westbrook. We're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later on today. The National Baseball Hall of Fame inducted 7 on Sunday. Las Vegas, Orlando, and San Antonio have been pegged to join the XFL in 2023. Former Laker Slava Medvedenko is selling his title rings to raise money for his native Ukraine. And we are 50 days from week 1 in the NFL season. So there you have it, folks. That is your news and your updates. Like we sometimes say, the news you can use from the weekend. I'm going to jump right into some baseball scores and some WNBA scores from yesterday. Let's see. In Major League Baseball, the Cubs defeat the Phillies at the Park 4-3. The Angels beat the Braves 9-1. The Yankees blanked the Orioles 6-zip. The Marlins get by the Pirates 6-5 in 10 innings. The Blue Jays double up on the Red Sox 8-4. The Twins go and take the game in Detroit over the Tigers 9-1. The Cardinals fall to the Reds 6-3. The Guardians also fall to the White Sox by the same score, 6-3. The Rays and the Royals go at it. The Royals take that game 4-2. The Brewers edge out the Rockies at home 10-9. The Rangers get by the A's 11-8. The Giants fall to the Dodgers 7-4. The Nationals get by the Diamondbacks 4-3. The Astros beat the Mariners 8-5. And also by a score of 8-5, the Mets beat the Padres in that game. In the WNBA on Sunday, the Wings defeat the Fever 96-86. Kenny Lomax, thanks for tuning in, good brother. The Dream fall to the Storm 82-72. And in the closer game yesterday, the Sun defeat the Lynx 86-79. Folks, that is your news, your scores, and your updates for July 25th, 2022. So, when I last talked to you all in studio, I talked to you and I mentioned the story about Sean Marks, the former GM of the Brooklyn Nets, and his concern and his thought process and his thoughts on the Sixers and their signing of James Harden, re-signing of James Harden, all with going in touch with signing PJ Tucker. He believed that the Sixers should be somehow, some way investigated for tampering because of the time frame that PJ Tucker was allegedly signed by the Philadelphia 76ers. So we talk about that a little bit more, and you know, it says now that the league is suspicious. I don't understand it. I don't get it. Like, especially coming from Sean Marks, because Sean Marks, I know, like I mentioned, I know you were a former GM, so you know how this thing works. And this is where I begin to maybe beat the dead horse again, because these are the things that I said when we initially talked about the situation. But it just brings it back to me once again when we talk about, and I keep seeing articles about it. It's amazing to see how things play out in certain situations, if you will. The Philadelphia 76ers have, in regards to what the fans believe and what locals believe, have always been in the eye shot of the media, of the national media, especially, in a not so good way. We also know and we also feel very strongly about the NBA and some of their voting processes for specific awards. And we can easily say, when we continually see these articles, we can easily say, oh, like we like to say, oh, the hate continues. It continues. But getting back to what Sean Marks mentioned and how this thing plays out, I understand where you could try and state your argument, possibly that they were talking to each other at the end of the season before they really could, and all kinds of things of that nature. But again, it would be tough because you arguably would not have any or much hard proof of that particular type of dialogue or that particular situation coming or having taken place. So you can't really prove that they talk to each other and whatever, yada, 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 however you may think about it. But you also have to think about the entire situation as well. Like I mentioned in the beginning, that PJ Tucker became a free agent. And at the point he becomes a free agent, he is available to sign with any team that he wishes. As far as being, that would be constitute an unrestricted free agent. If he were a restricted free agent, he could listen to offers, and his team that he was last with would have the option to match any offer for him. So apparently he was an unrestricted free agent. He, right out of the gate, he signed with the Philadelphia 76ers. And of course, they all picked out the the most obvious point, that there is a relationship with Daryl Morey. They were both in Houston at the same time. There is a relationship with James Harden. They were also all three in Houston at one point together. So that's where they are arguably laying the suspicions. Daryl Morey was caught, was caught under fire a little bit when he first got here for a tweet. Okay, but again, the same thing with, they signed Daniel House, another Houston Rockets former teammate of theirs. And then they made the stink about James Harden taking less money. Like, I don't understand how they figured that, because in the same situation, he was under contract with the player option, which would have made him an unrestricted free agent. So at that point, when he opted out of that last year, that final year of that contract, made him an unrestricted free agent, meaning he would be able to sign with whomever he decided to sign with. There apparently was a conversation leading back to, or having ties to, some of the things that James Harden said once he got traded here. The simple fact that he wanted to come here, he will do whatever it takes to help this team win. At the end of the season, he, at the closeout interviews and last interviews, he said the same thing. He reiterated that again. So the conversation reportedly went on the lines of James Harden telling Daryl to do whatever he needed to do, sign who he needed to sign, and give me what was left over. In my opinion, from one of your stars, arguably your second superstar, I have no issues with that. He took a $15 million pay cut. They brought in some pieces that were needed, that will help this team, that will bring a little bit more comfort to James Harden, because he has some more people that he's played with before. We have seen him in the gym working out with teammates currently, but it's gonna bring the edge, the toughness that a lot of the players talked about that they did not have in the end of the season going into that Miami series. Players like PJ Tucker, who Joel Embiid mentioned in his outgoing press conferences, mentioned about his toughness and not about his scoring, about the little things that he does, that we say the intangibles, the game within the game that he plays, that helps so many teams that he's been on. Definitely will help the 76ers. It's going to help in a major way, because it's a veteran who not admires, but who warrants the respect and demands the respect, and will push these guys to get on the same page and get tough, and be able to get through some of this adversity that they have not been able to get through. So I think it's a good thing. But again, with the situation with the investigation, it's just mind-boggling to me. You know how this had come out. Like the speculation, and here's what the speculation is, and I'll read this for you just so you know what is actually going on. There is suspicion in some corners of the league that Harden had to have consented to this arrangement. So also here it is. Before I finish reading that, what they're saying is, or they're alleging is, that James Harden could get a lot of that money back and possibly more after this 2-year deal. And this is part of the reason why he accepted the $15 million pay cut, or accepted and signed this 2-year deal, team friendly deal, because there's a wink wink whatever deal allegedly that says that he would get this money later on after the 2023 season, where he could be up again for a max or a super max contract. But let me just read it to you, and here's what the suspicion is, and I'm going to read it again. Start from the very beginning. There is a suspicion in some corners of the league that Harden had to have consented to this arrangement because he also secured a wink-wink guarantee about the future, meaning a promise from Morey that would allow Harden to recoup what he left on the table this offseason by declining the player option for next season in his new Sixers deal, and then signing a whopper of a 5-year deal in the summer of 2023 at almost 34. Such speculation is inevitable given how close Morey and Harden clearly are. But I've also heard plenty around the league question whether the Sixers, beyond the fact that these types of arrangements are against league rules, could actually bring themselves to give Harden any assurances. End quote. You know, here, like I mentioned a little while ago, they said the Sixers have been under the microscope since Daryl Morey took over in the front office. He was fined, like I mentioned to you, for an automated tweet regarding Harden, as it was viewed as tampering. The Sixers were finally on the road to officially landing Harden 1 year later. Many wanted to see the 76ers get investigated for tampering once again. The 76ers are expected to face a possible punishment for tampering after signing PJ Tucker to a 3-year deal in the opening minutes of free agency. I don't get it, where teams can agree on deals but nothing can be finalized until the moratorium, right? Like we said, which is a week. But this statement clearly says in the opening minutes of free agency. So wherein lies the problem? Where is the problem? The opening minutes of free agency, that means it was in the free agency period. So where is the problem? So you're basically trying to say that there was something in place before then, which happens a lot. Deals get in place and you hear something immediately, like when free agency starts, that a player A has agreed to a deal with team C. Deal can't be finalized until yada yada yada. We know that. We know it happens. So why is there so much interest in how the Sixers did it? You know, and I think, like I said, it's because of the situation where I mentioned about the James Harden deal, where he took the pay cut, and I said I respected that a whole lot more from a superstar, as opposed to the moves that LeBron James and Kevin Durant made to get a championship. James Harden has got to apparently where he wanted to be as a team, as far as on a team. He has some players here that he feels like he can play with, and Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris, and Tyrese Maxey. Feel strong enough that they can do some things here. They brought in some pieces, and I get the fact that he tried it in other places. They got close, but it didn't happen. Obviously, he feels like this is possibly or arguably his final chance. He feels confident enough that it can be done here, so he wants the team to be in every position, and he wants to help put that team in every position to be able to do that. And again, I don't see anything wrong with him taking that pay cut in order to help the team get to the position that they all want to get to. So we'll see what happens. Like they said, you know, they're being accused of having a wink-wink deal in place with Harden, yada yada yada. But like, how does anyone know that unless it was leaked out or something like that. So how does anyone know that? Like I said, they would definitely have a hard time coming up with some hard proof that that activity even took place. Finally, it says that it would be difficult for anybody to prove that's truly the case. As long as Harden remains on a Daryl Morey controlled roster, league personnel will likely remain suspicious about how roster moves are being handled. So, again, like we say, it's a Daryl Morey thing, it's a James Harden thing, it's a tandem thing, it's a package deal. We'll have to deal with that for the time that they are here. But nonetheless, I have no issues with what they have done. I actually like pretty much all of the moves. Again, the one deal that happened on draft night that people could arguably be a little bit feel like a little bit of a way about due to the speaking in regards to the fan base in this particular player, Danny Green, who was beginning to become a fan favorite, I believe here. But again, that was a complete business decision. And folks, you have to understand the business side, like we always tell you. And the business with that situation was the serious injury, or the seriousness of the injury to Danny Green that he sustained in the Miami Heat series would have put him out all of next season and possibly part of the following season. We all know Danny Green's up there in the age a little bit, so he could very easily, or he could arguably be contemplating retirement with this injury because it was a very serious injury. So he could be contemplating retirement. But what you did as far as the Sixers in making that trade on draft night for DeAnthony Melton from Memphis, you got younger on your wing. You got a player that does a lot of the things that Danny Green does with a little bit more off the dribble activity, and someone that's younger. And you cleared up some space on your cap. You were set to pay Danny Green $10 million. And what was the point? If you're trying to make improvements to win, to get past where you've been the past 2 years and ended in the playoffs, you make this move on a business side, to better the franchise. And it would make no sense to have kept him on the roster, paying him $10 million, and you know that he's not going to play all season. So in essence, he's really not helping you play by being. I'm sorry, he's not helping you by being on the roster, collecting $10 million, and you know that he's not going to play. So pretty good business move on. You got something back in return, which I think could help immediately on this roster. Yesterday, or the day before, maybe over the weekend, pretty much, the Sixers that you have announced plans to build a new arena in Center City. So there's a lot of talk about the arena in Center City, or the arena being built in Center City, is projected or speculated to be at the site of the Fashion District, which again, like I mentioned it, most of us from the city of Philadelphia who are in our, I'm going to say 40s or up, remember this Fashion District being called the Gallery, but it's called the Fashion District now. And it is now the projected site of the new Sixers independently funded basketball stadium, which would be called 76th Place in Center City, Philadelphia. A lot of people are back and forth with it. One of the first things that people talked about was parking. Some of the things that they mentioned in their decision on this particular site was the accessibility by public transportation. They say in their research they found that there were more accesses, or there was more access to public transportation in that particular spot than it even was at the Wells Fargo Center in South Philadelphia. And also, mind you, just a quick note, the Sixers lease is up in 2031, and this is where the projected building is projected to open. They also say that this new building will help revitalize or continue to continue or add to the revitalization of Center City. Also, getting back to the parking issue, there are several parking facilities um, in few miles distances of the stadium. They also say that one of the benefits of that is that they're far enough away from the stadium, from the projected site of the stadium, where they will have access directly to the stadium from the parking lot, and then the parking lots have different exits, so it will somewhat ease traffic. Because if you've ever been down to South Philly, driving down there, you gotta you gotta create yourself or give yourself some options. Because coming out of there at the end of that game, people come out and they just drive and it seems like to me, and I say this a lot, like it seems like people that you could say lived in this city for like most of their lives or for long periods of time or lived in the area seem like they have one way to go to and leave places to go back home, which I think is insane because I feel like just me personally, I feel like you should have more than one way to get places and more than one way to get home. I'm the same way, like coming home from work. There, I got options. I can go one way, I can go this way, I can go that way, and I think that helps. For me, it helps with getting around some traffic. I mean, when you have an event like that, a major sporting event, there's definitely going to be traffic. There's no way to get around the traffic, but you can find other ways to minimize your dealings with the traffic, and I think that's one of the things that they're trying to stress here with this site being where it is. Like I mentioned, it's very accessible to public transportation. It says in the article, it says the arena will have direct connection to over 200 stations, which is 9 times more than the Wells Fargo Center. It said those who drive, the site is within a half-mile radius of 29 parking garages operating with significant space capacity. And again, like I said, they will even have some of those garages which will spread out the traffic congestion. There will be some that will have access to the building. So I think the Sixers or the ownership is trying to catch up with some of the other teams in the league, some of the other things going on in the league where a lot of teams are getting new arenas. Also, the Sixers share the Wells Fargo with the Flyers. When the Wings are in season, they share it with the Wings. They used to share it with the AFL, Philadelphia Soul. I think they used to also share it with the Indoor Soccer League or whatever. But there was a lot going on in that building. And then with this new building, they can create a space, create a home, literally of their home. It will help because of, like we said, it will help the revitalization of downtown Center City, because with the hotels and things that would be definitely in walking distance, like they said, the parking garages are in walking distance. There's other things to do, so like people could come in early for a game and pretty much make a night out of it. You go in, you have an early dinner, you go to a game, and then you maybe go somewhere after the game to a bar or something after the game, or if not, you go home, and you could arguably have less stress getting out with these parking lots, or you can just get on public transportation and go, wherever you parked your car, if that was your situation or whatever, or get on your car, get in the bus, and go ahead about your way. So, I think it might help with some jobs. Also, because again, it's going to be a private issue, it's going to be privately funded facility. So it should be interesting. Like you said, it's a ways off. It's projected in 2031. So there's going to be some times, probably going to be some news about some tweaks. Maybe it's going to be a lot of questions. A lot of things are going to be done and discussed about this thing, and a lot of planning. And the more news I get, the more I will bring to you all, as I always do. So getting back to the Sixers one last time, and one of the things that I wanted to bring to everybody's attention is what they did in free agency, with the signing of James Harden for that 68 million, which is the 33 for this year, the 35.6 for the second year. They also signed PJ Tucker to his deal, Daniel House, and now they're in that range where what the league calls the flex, have a little bit of flexibility against that apron of tax, the luxury tax apron. What that basically means is the Sixers now currently have about arguably 3 million in cap space that will put them right at the apron, and possibly avoid them from going over the luxury tax. There's a bunch of ways that they can stay there. Again, now that I'm looking at this, they can make some trades with some people and bring some other people in, and still not be on that cap. But again, like I said, they're like 3.4 million under that apron, where that's basically what they have, which is arguably like the veterans minimum. The only way I think that they could really bring in a significant key piece is possibly with some type of trade, where they could possibly trade Furkan Korkmaz, Jaden Springer, Shake Milton, Matisse Thybulle, one of those guys in the deal. They tried to move Tobias Harris, like I mentioned to you last week, but it was I mentioned it even when I said it. I thought in the beginning, I thought that things would revolve around him, but that contract that he has is just so hard to move that I'm sure they really didn't find any, if any at all, biters on taking on that contract. So that is probably going to have to wait until another time. Finally, for this first segment, I'll talk again a little bit about the situation that I got this morning, where it's involving Kevin Durant, some more Kevin Durant news. And the latest reports are that the Boston Celtics have emerged as a threat in landing Kevin Durant. They have allegedly, reportedly, been in talks with each other, Boston and Brooklyn, to possibly talk about a deal. One deal that was allegedly offered, the offer was, first, let me just say this, the Celtics have been rumored to be in talks for KD, and they allegedly want Jaylen Brown involved in any deal. So what was offered was Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and a draft pick for Kevin Durant, and that offer was rejected. The Nets are asking for Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, draft picks, plural, meaning more than one, draft picks, and one more rotation player for a deal for Kevin Durant. So I saw this article, and I always research and find out things to bring to you, other than sometimes we get like we got last week with the fun stuff or whatever. But the article is four trade requests, four reasons, whatever, that the Kevin Durant trade request can end. The first one, funny thing, he could actually play for the Nets to start the season. Again, people understanding the business, understanding the things that we tell you here, if you follow, and I know you do. You've heard us say this several times. You heard us say this several times within the Ben Simmons situation until something actually happened. You signed a 4-year extension, so you have 4 years left on the contract, which you are under contract, where the Nets ideally do not have to trade you at all. If nothing becomes of their liking, they don't have to trade you at all. You've got Kyrie Irving, who has already opted in So to move him, that would have to also be by a trade. But on the Kevin Durant front, he could very arguably or very easily start the season on the Brooklyn Nets roster. Um, they have Kyrie Irving, so they would like to possibly try and run it back. They could be getting some pieces back, but there's a lot of hope going on over there in Brooklyn, and I think that's part of the reason why Sean Marks had this comment, because of his past ties with the Nets, and he sees how things are going right now. And he sees the Sixers have arguably supplanted them as like in the top five rankings of Eastern Conference teams. But anyway, Brooklyn can hope that Ben Simmons recovers from his back injury. They can also hope that Joe Harris recovers from his ankle injury. They can hope the signing of T.J. Warren rediscovers the incredible scoring punch he showed in the bubble. They can hope that Nick Claxton improves enough to be an above average starting center, and they can bank on Royce O'Neal finally giving them a real 3-and-D wing. Yeah, well, we all know how I feel about the Simmons thing. I don't know about that. Joe Harris is arguably going to have to work his way back in, considering he is the wing player, the jump shooter, so he's going to have a lot to do with his legs. So that ankle is going to have to be 100% for him to be a serious contributor. Number two, Durant could hold out until the trade happens. You saw the same thing with Ben Simmons. He could sit out, but again, people have seen the blueprint what the Sixers did in the finding, so they could arguably as well go that route. They could find him, and when you do stuff like that, then you have trade value that drops, and arguably that helps and that drops your trade value. So that lessens your possibilities of being moved. He could get traded to the Suns. Don't think that'll happen, because I'm sure that the Nets will be asking for Devin Booker in that deal. They would not be willing to take what Phoenix would be offering in a deal. And then he gets traded to some mystery team, which I doubt will happen. I don't think he'll get traded to some mystery team at all. I think what will happen is he'll end up starting on the roster, and they'll continue to work and possibly revisit it during the trade deadline when that stuff comes up. And then again, like we said, they could just end everything and say, no, nobody's giving us what we want, so we're going to hold on to him. And then if he plays, he plays. If he doesn't, he doesn't. So we'll definitely see how that plays out in the upcoming weeks, months, days going into the season. Right now, folks, I'm going to take my first break. When I return, I'm going to talk a little bit about the LeBron James, Russell Westbrook situation, and we're going to talk a little football, since we are, again, 50 days away from the beginning of the NFL season, and we are maybe a week away from Eagles opening training camp. Folks, you are tuned in to SportsRap Podcast right here on Heat 100 Radio. It's your boy signing out. See you on the other side in just a few minutes. Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, both players on the current LA Lakers roster. We know the situation. Like I said, I like to give you backdrop when I start talking about things. So here we go. We know the backdrop of how Russell Westbrook ended up in LA. There was some talk, some chatter. LeBron allegedly voiced his opinion. The front office listened because of that superstar. They want to appease him. Made a move, got rid of some young talent, some young pieces, traded them to Washington for Russell Westbrook. By a month or so after that trade, they began to realize that arguably or possibly this isn't working. It became very apparent when the Lakers didn't make the playoffs. Been consistent talk about these two particular players not being able to play together. Their alleged big three of LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Davis cannot coexist together. You need to figure out something how it ends. And most recently, with the KD saga and the KD drama, if you will, we've heard that there's been talk possibly about the Lakers acquiring Kyrie Irving in a trade. There's still some rumbling, some mumbling about that. I definitely don't know what the situation fully is yet there, but we will soon see. But apparently, there's this rift where LeBron James is apparently done with Russell Westbrook. You saw the reports on social media where they said that they were at a summer league game, sitting like rows apart from each other, seats apart from each other, and didn't even acknowledge or didn't even speak to each other. Um, Westbrook with everything in his press conferences while he was there, and then at the end of the season with the threats that he allegedly received and how he felt that he was the best player, some of his comments on that team, how he felt that he was not being treated fairly. Uh, you know, it's really strange how much impact a player actually has on what a front office does. Um, I understand where a front office may go to a star player and inquire or pick their brain on what they're thinking, see if they have any suggestions on what they would like to the franchise to attempt to do to improve the team to make things better for that particular superstar. I do get that, but like with LeBron, it's on a different level. And we see how it has played out. I'm not gonna go into detail of how I feel it played out. Anybody that knows has been watching basketball the last few years or whatever, so you know how a lot of these different situations have played out. So the Lakers are right now, um, after he opted in, I think he opted into about maybe a 46 something $1 million deal for his player option. I think it was Westbrook. But right now they have him on the roster. They could conceivably still be trying to move him for some other pieces, but it's kind of like the situation with the Sixers are in with Tobias Harris, but for different reasons. If you get what I'm saying, if you get where I'm going with that, I'm not sure how many other teams are or would be willing right now to kick the tires on Russell Westbrook with the contract that he has. I don't know if people feel he's still at the level that he believes that he is. And again, I talked about this last week when I talked about the situation. I said if anybody doesn't want to believe me, always go to that Kobe documentary. I forget the title of it. When I think the title, I'll post it and I'll find it again. But he got Kobe. He got it. Okay, he got it. And there are a lot of guys that I feel like need to get it. And I think Russell Westbrook is one of those guys. And I'm not saying that he couldn't be a contributor on a team. Yes, I think he could be a contributor on a team. But even like with the comment that he said with he's the best player on the Lakers, even though I am not the hugest LeBron James fan for my own reasons, basketball wise, I don't agree with that statement that Russell Westbrook made. Basketball wise, I somewhat admire the things that LeBron James can do on the basketball court with his physical stature and size. So again, like I said, I'm not the hugest LeBron James fan, but basketball wise, I get it. I understand what he can do and who he is as far as the basketball player. But like I said, it's just my personal things that I have where I'm just not the hugest fan. And I'm not saying I dislike him or anything like that. I'm just not a huge fan. But again, I disagree with that comment that Russell Westbrook made where he put out there and said that he was the best player on the team. I don't get that. Although you both are up there in age, LeBron has, although I have my issues and my ways and thoughts about how they happened, he did go on to teams and help teams win championships. I can say that. Again, like I said, in my own way, I really don't like the way that those entire situations played out, but nonetheless, he has done it. And if he is where a lot of media projects him and how, and in a lot of ways how he comes off as being, and I'm not necessarily saying that he is this person. I'm just saying sometimes it comes off like him being like this, having that much influence that the Lakers will still try to move Russell Westbrook at some point. But we'll see how that all goes and how that all plays out. So moving along, the Robert Reeves, thanks for tuning in. Moving along, we are again, like I mentioned, 50 days away from football season. 50 days away from football season. So, that being said, we have to talk some Eagles. We got to talk some Eagles. We got to talk a little bit of NFC East, where I think the Eagles can win the division with the additions, with the moves that they made this off season. I feel like they put themselves in position to win the division. I think they can supplant Dallas in the division. Washington, again, Washington's defense is pretty decent. They have some pieces there, but their big question mark is Carson Wentz. Their big question mark is quarterback. The Giants, questions in a number of places. The Cowboys, you don't know who's going to show up. The Eagles made the improvements to become kings of the NFC East once again. So, like I mentioned also, I think a lot of their success will revolve around Jalen Hurts. Although he has now the tools around him to succeed, again, he has to do it. We saw the numbers from last year. We like those numbers, but we need to see him be the quarterback. We need to see him do more things with his arm than with his legs. And now you have the tools around you to do so. Like you say, the biggest question is how much better has he gotten? We've seen all the work that he has put in video and in talking and interviews and things of that nature, and people that he's worked out with, and how he's worked out with his new receivers along with his current receivers. So his familiarity with the coach and the system will also help. And everybody say that they see a difference in him, so hopefully that is truly the case. Which player has the most improved? Arguably Jalen Reagor. Like we said, he was in that draft where the Eagles could have had Justin Jefferson. They opted to take Jalen Reagor, allegedly because of his speed on the outside. Has not lived up to his billing as of yet. So look to see some things from him. Like I said, the Eagles addressed a lot of pieces, a lot of spaces, a lot of holes that they needed. Cornerback, they did some linebacker thing. They did some rushing, some edge rushers that they needed some help in that position. So they did some things. And again, like I said, the biggest and the most shocking move of all was on draft night, first day of draft night, when they made that trade for AJ Brown. That arguably set the table for what they were going to do, and they lived up to the moves after that. Like we said, the other ones were the free agents who were arguably inked or basically inked before the actual draft due to free agency period. But the biggest move was that of that trade for AJ Brown, and it wasn't like they gave stuff away. They traded, and they still ended up getting picks and making selections for replacements for some play from veterans who may be on their way out as far as just their age and abilities. So they got some pieces who can fill in, and they have enough time now where they can get the tutelage from these veterans and be ready to step in when it's their time to step in, without many gaps or loopholes or anything like that. So I think the Eagles did pretty good in the draft and in off season. Also, just a little another thing from the NFL, they have had some teams who have announced and released somewhat some new uniforms or some alternate uniforms, if you will. The Eagles are also on this list. The Eagles will bring back the Kelly Green uniforms, which are the uniforms from the 80s and the 90s. So we're looking at like that Jerome Brown, Reggie White, Randall Cunningham era. Definitely looking forward to see those. Those are like classic uniforms that you miss. Bring back great memories as far as what the Eagles team is and excitement in the off season. And it'd be cool to see them play in some of those older uniforms. So other teams have other stuff. You can actually go to the page, and I posted the article, I believe, but you can go to the page and check it and see what other teams have in store for their alternate uniforms. Like I mentioned in the opening, the Hall of Fame, Major League Baseball inducted 7 players over the weekend. Those 7 particular inductees were David Ortiz, Tony Oliva, Buck O'Neil, Jim Cat, Gil Hodges, Bud Fowler, and Minnie Minosa. So congratulations to all of them. Some of them have already left us, and so they are in posthumously. So congratulations to them and their families for being in. And also congratulations to David Ortiz, aka Big Papi, who allegedly stole the show with his speech over the induction ceremony weekend. So finally, folks, I want to talk to you a little bit about a story that I saw that I thought was pretty interesting. I thought it was also a little crazy and a little strange. So I'm sure you kind of remember how when I talk about these pro athletes getting into situations, and then I dig and I tell you about a lot of their backgrounds, which is a lot of the cases they come from like nothing, very poor situations, if that, or not having much, and then they get into situations where they can do everything that they dreamed of, and they feel that they're somewhat untouchable and all of that, things of that nature, whatever. The story I'm talking in reference to is a story that I saw that caught my attention about a former retired or former NBA player, Nikola Pekovic, played for the Minnesota Timberwolves. He was drafted in 2008 as the 31st pick in that draft. He was under contract with the team in Europe, so he didn't make his debut until 2 years later in 2010. Played minutes as a backup, averaging 5 points, 3 rebounds. He improved that next season to 13 and 7. Those numbers rolled over the next 2 seasons. He was up to 17 points. Then he got an ankle injury that protected him, became a chronic injury and a problem from 2015 to 2017. And also in between that time in 2017 is when the Minnesota Timberwolves selected their newest star, or one of their becoming star, Karl Anthony Towns. So what the story is saying is that he became an overall drug lord back in his home country. Um, all along when he was in the NBA, there were stories that he had ties to the Cyrus brothers, who were allegedly major drug lords in Serbia or wherever. I think that's where he was from. Yeah, Serbia. But he had ties to them, and even at one point, he had several business investments with them. There was even at one point where a car was pulled over. The car was in his name. There was guns and drugs in the car. He took care of some things for those brothers, and he had just had very serious ties to those brothers. So you never truly know where some of these professional athletes come from. Their backgrounds could be very sketchy, could be very interesting. Like we said, this background and this story was one that I thought was a little interesting, a little crazy to see. But the injury that he had that caused him to be away from the NBA could have had a major impact on him as far as financially, where he knew that his ties were there, and then or he could have been locked into where he was a big time investor because he had the NBA flow of money, and it could have been a way to clean the money. So again, like I always tell you when I bring you stories like this, there's a lot of avenues, a lot of ways, a lot of angles you can look at these particular situations. But again, like I said, the story was just something that I thought was a little strange, a little weird for that to happen, for him to be actually allegedly labeled as a drug lord. Like I can understand maybe if he ended up selling some drugs or whatever, but they actually labeled him as a drug lord, like he was the man or something like that. I don't think that was truly the case. I just think that he had ties to the biggest drug lords, and so they just incorporated him in that mix. Especially like I mentioned when I said that car was pulled over and the amount of drugs and whatever was in the car, and the car was in his name, and he helped those brothers in that situation financially and legally. So you never know. You can have people that are into some really intricate, some really gangster, if you will, stuff outside, and sometimes that sport could be the way for them to kind of step away from the situation or attempt to step away and remove themselves from that situation and move on to better things. And then you get situations like we said, if guys get hurt and can't play, and then it's like they don't know anything else. They have to get over the embarrassment of possibly being a star, and then you have being a star and then having to go and work a regular 9 to 5. Let's see. I got a comment here that I see. See if I can read it. Robert Reese, he said, I missed who you were talking about, heard the story, missed the name. Yeah, Robert, it is Nikola Pekovic. He used to play for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Like I said, he was the center there prior to them drafting Karl Anthony Towns. Like I said, wasn't too bad. He did what he was supposed to do. He took advantage of the time that he had in the NBA, and he improved and worked his way into being a starter. But again, he just had, like we said, with big guys, and you get ankle injuries and foot injuries for big guys, it becomes a problem. It was just a chronic injury, a nagging injury, and he couldn't do it. But the story, like I said, was just it was just really weird to me, and it was a little crazy. Like I mentioned, it just to see that that the different angles. Like I said, I always, when I get stories like this, I always sit before I bring them to the show to give you my thoughts and my opinions on the stories and on the information. I always like to sit back and read everything. You always notice I'm pulling papers out when you see me here, so I highlight, underline stuff, and I like to go through different, like I mentioned, different angles on how you could talk about the stories. I always tend to go with my personal thoughts on the situation, but I also like to keep it somewhat open minded. Uh, like I say, I tell you, like I went with the Brittany Griner situation. From the very beginning, I told you I felt like she was going to be a pawn. And a lot of people were saying, oh, I hope she doesn't become a pawn. By the time people started saying that, I felt like it was already too late and it was already done. And the last story, the last update I gave you on that with her going to court and pleading guilty, and the way that situation played out, I again said that now I feel like it is coming to fruition. So it was just a little funny, a little weird, and I don't mean funny like ha funny. It's just funny how wow like this dude was an NBA player, and what really happened to have him go back and be allegedly this particular type of person, or was he this type of person really before he came to the NBA? Did he need to go to the NBA for them to have a way to do A, B, and C? Was he be going to the NBA to be the investor on the back end or whatever? So again, like I said, it's always angles to a lot of these stories, or most of these stories, that you can go on and talk about. But I like to bring you my thoughts, my opinions in the most sincerest way, and try and give you, paint the picture for you where you can see where my angle is or my thoughts, and you can project your own in more than one way, not just one sided and one way to see things. So that's pretty much where we end today. Great show today. Like I said, thanks to everybody that tuned in earlier. Thanks to everybody that's tuned in right now currently. Again, I told you and I've been telling you to save the date, so the date is official, September the 4th. Yes, the Sunday before Labor Day at LB's Lounge from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Heat 100 Radio, Sports Rap, Simply Monica will be presenting a chicken fish fry. Tickets are $15. We have tickets I will be getting with you, and I'll always post when I actually have the tickets in hand. But if you wish, you can DM me, message me, and let me know how many tickets you need, and I can put them on hold for you. And then later on down the line, I'll tell you how you can get me and pay for your tickets. So like I said, tickets are $15. There will be more at the door. More information and more advertising is coming, so just stay tuned. You know where to find me, folks, each and every Monday right here on Heat 100 Radio, heat100radio.com. Look in the group in the description. There's the RDO link for heat100radio.com. You can get us there, or you can just go to your phone, download the TuneIn app, because we got the best shows, the best topics, and we got tickets. We always got tickets, so you can go stand in lines for shows, or you can do what we always tell you and tune in to Heat 100 Radio to find out where we have tickets or what we have tickets for. But you got to tune in order to find out. Again, like I said, Instagram and Twitter, at SportsRap_D. Right here, Facebook, SportsRap Podcast is the group page. Also the web, let me see, what is the web? I got so much going on. The web, SportsRapRadio.com, YouTube, SportsRap TV. If you missed any of this, you can catch up and get the audio on iHeart, on Apple, on Google Podcasts, on whatever or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be great on purpose. It's your boy, Sports Rap D, signing out, and I will see you all next week right back here on Heat 100 Radio for the Sports Rap Podcast.